this. Get this bad boy going.
So it's gone 2 bars.
That should be enough for about an hour and a half.
Okay.
If not, then
I'll let you know.
if it's right near the end, yeah. Exactly. Okay. Then this. Dawn, can you count to 10 for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Read back correct. We are good to go. Okay. Oh, lights. I got that.
Oh, air
and
conditioner.
Air conditioner. I don't know how to
It just went down.
make myself feel better.
Off.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, if you wouldn't mind, my dear,
Yes.
would you be able to get copies of these?
After. Because I want to watch this.
I forgot, you said you had a copy of me.
Go all the way to the other side.
Okay, we're good there. We're good there. Okay. Good morning, Dawn. My name is Specialist Ogden. I am a military museum technology specialist with the California Military Department. I am the museum coordinator for Heroes Hall Veterans Resource and Education Center, located at the Orange County Fairgrounds. Those are the two institutions that I am conducting today's oral history. Today's date is February 8th, 2026, and it is 11-ish a.m. With that being said, Don, can you please spell your name and date of birth?
My name is Don Hage, spelled Hage. August 2025 is my date of birth.
And what branch did you serve in, and what was your retiring rate?
My branch of service is the U.S. Navy, and I'm a lieutenant, junior grade.
Perfect. And also in this interview, as I mentioned, I won't be too auditory and kind of as you talk, but I am actively listening. If you see me do this, that's usually in the effect right before I'm about to cut to a new scene or turn off the equipment. So don't think this has anything to do with you. But with that being said, let's get started. So Dawn, can you tell me where you were born and raised and a little about your mom and dad and your family and what they did?
I was born on 8/20/25, and this was in Minneapolis, actually in Glen Lake, Minnesota. That's where I actually lived, and I lived most of the time in my high school days in Hopkins, Minnesota, which is nearby. And our family was, my dad, my mother met when she came over from Norway alone as a young woman from a family of 11 kids, and she met him because she became a assistant nurse in a children's wing of a tuberculosis home, and my dad was a tuberculosis patient at that time, and they met and got married, and we then settled down to, my dad was the postmaster of this little post office at this place, and he also then started up a little a business of repairing refrigerators and radios, which was new at that time because they didn't have refrigerators, they had block ice in homes. And so this is the people that I was raised with. They were very hardworking, very uneducated from the standpoint of there was no university education there, but they learned the hard way of the facts of life and were a very good moral influence on me, and taught me, if nothing else, to how to work hard and do the job right, and that's kind of the basics. My religious background was from the Lutheran Church from Norway. My mother was a very devout Lutheran. My dad had no spiritual education or inclinations, as far as I know, for as long as he lived. He lived until he was age 62. My mother lived to 94. He was, however, a very strong smoker of cigarettes, which was quite the thing to do those days. So that was basically how I was brought up. So other than knowing what to do the minute we got up, in other words, if you were healthy, you got up and you went to work. If you were sick, you went to bed. And that was it, period. No in between.
Now, did you have any brothers or sisters?
Just one sister, and she was 5 years younger than I am, yes.
So growing up in Minnesota, hearing what you were just saying, that when you were not sick, you would work. If you were sick, you would be asleep. Did you ever go to school?
Yes, I did go to school. The school was about a mile or two away. You walked to school. They didn't have school buses in those times. And one day when I was in my early grades, I just didn't like the school, so I decided to go home. So I walked home, and my mother said, "What are you doing coming home?" And I said, "Oh, I don't feel good." She said, "Okay, take off your clothes and go to bed." And that was not at all in my plans. So I never pulled that trick again. And so they're very practical education, everything you did.
Now, your dad being a postmaster and your mom working as an assistant nurse, what did you do for work when growing up?
Well, it was just the things as kids do around the house. You had little duties that we had to do, straighten up your room. Although I had a room with my sister, very simple things. And but when I was about 12 years old, my folks got me a job as a paperboy, and that was one of the great educations of my life, because it was truly taught me that I had to put out, and it was my money. Whether I lost it or kept it was my job, and it was the greatest education I had. And so that was the way I was started. Then I worked for my dad as a counter boy in his store while he fixed the radios and stuff. And so I got to know the retail trade and all that went into that. So I was busy all the time. There was no such thing. I did not own a car until I got out of the Navy. And so that was that's just the way it was. Of course, there weren't many people or people in high school who owned a car during the war and all of that. That was almost unknown because everything was rationed.
And especially growing up in the 30s during the Great Depression, keeping busy was a way of, even in itself, its own form of entertainment.
Yes.
Now, growing up in Minnesota, did your family have running electricity and running water?
Yes, we did have, we had both. They rented their homes. They did not have a home that they bought it. So they rented the homes, and they would rent a two-story house, and then they would rent out the upper story because they took in some of the tuberculosis children and for the tuberculosis patients while the folks were being treated. And so that's how they made their living, was by raising those kids along our side too.
So your house really wasn't kind of quiet. It sounded fairly busy.
Very busy, yes, all the time.
And did you assist your mom in taking care of those patients as well?
Yes, yes, as you know, whatever they needed done, pick that up or do this or that, that was my job. There was no question. There was no such thing as saying, that's not my job, Mom. I can't imagine saying that.
Especially to a Norwegian mom.
Oh yeah, hard work was the name of your game, you know.
Now Minnesota is very well known for having a very large Scandic population, even to the effect that they formulated a regiment called the 99th Viking Battalion, specifically of Minnesotans. When you went to high school, I'm going to be jumping ahead just so I can kind of understand. This will help me structure future questions. Why did you choose the Navy?
A very idiotic question. I always liked little sailboats. I never had a sailboat till I was about 80 years old. But I would, when the spring thaw would come in, we'd have a lot of little ponds around, and I'd get a piece of board, and I'd rig a little sail on that thing and sail it out on the ponds, and put some ants on there as the crew. And because I just enjoyed that, I thought, gee, that's fun. So that became very interesting.
And very influential.
Yeah. Like. So then when I was finally in the Navy, they shipped me down to Miami, and I taught myself to sail on Biscayne Bay in Miami.
Like a little Sabbath or something like that?
Yeah. And so it was fun.
Well, progressing back to the 30s, given the fact that your dad was a radio repairman, did you guys have a family radio in the home?
We did, yes. The primary radios were kind of a piece of furniture in those days. They were beautiful cabinets on the freestanding radios that stood about 5 feet tall. And of course, most of the homes had the small tabletop radios, but they were all made of wood. Plastic was not known at that time as yet. So it was a big industry, and then I was used as, when I learned how to drive at 14, he had me deliver stuff like that with my buddies, and we would haul repaired radios and refrigerators for him as such, and so it worked out very well.
So you were exposed to a lot of different skill sets growing up: electronics, mechanical, medical, postal. You're kind of becoming a jack of all trades, it sounds like.
Yes, and masters of none.
That's what my dad tells me all the time. Brandon, I know you like history, but if you don't focus on something. Can you recall on the radio if you had a favorite station, like listening to like Little Orphan Annie or H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, or?
You're talking to the membership man of Minnesota, because I was a member of Orphan Annie's Secret Society on the radio, and I would sit at that radio and listen to what Orphan Annie was doing these days. It was not a girly show; it was stuff. And if you had a fact, you could either send in a used up bottle of Ovaltine, or a factory, or a facsimile of the product, and my folks never felt they could afford it, nor did they want it. So I sat in front of a radio and at my buddy's house and drew a picture of the container that this came in. And then I sent that in to Orphan Annie, and she sent me back my decoder pin. Now this seems childish now, but by God, this is really, really great stuff.
Now, listening to Little Orphan Annie, did you by chance ever listen to one of FDR's fireside chats?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Why did you listen to him at that time?
It was just a thing to do. Of course, he was a great speaker, and he spoke so slowly and easily and spoke so fully that, and in those days, everything, when the president spoke, he was speaking about stuff that affected your everyday life, yes. So, no question about it.
Now, at that time, growing up, you were born in 1925, you're starting to become about 14, 15 years old when a man named Adolf Hitler in Europe decides to expand his war of aggression or expansion and invades Poland, and World War II breaks out. Can you recall hearing about that?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
How did you find out?
Just reading, don't forget I was a newspaper boy, so I knew what was in the newspapers, and he was on our minds all the time because this was the big newspaper item. And so you knew every move he was making as he went through Europe and wherever he was. And of course the whole nation was affected. We were not in the war at that time, but the industries were starting to be affected because they were sending a lot of products over to Great Britain and people who were considered to be our allies in Norway and so forth like that, yes.
And that's actually going to bring me up my next question, and why I articulated this is because your mom is a first generation from Norway. Can you recall the day when Norway was invaded by the Nazis, and how did that make your mom?
I can't remember the day exact. I think it was in August of 1940. I believe that was right. And yes, Hitler took Norway because he needed that as a base for his submarines and also his aircraft, because what we were sending over to the Soviets, to Russia, was going over right along the coast of Norway. So if he had those there, he could easily, the submarines could sink them. So that was a big thing. And of course, he, as we said, he took Norway, and my grandparents lived right on the coast. When my grandfather was a fisherman in the summertime, in the wintertime, and a farmer in the wintertime. And but they were right there by the road, and Norway had, or rather there was a army base not too far right from there. They bought some of the food from my grandparents, and so it was vital to. There was a lot of war right along there, and
talking with your mom, could you recall what her reaction was finding out that Norway was invaded by chance?
Yes, but it didn't really dawn on us as to the feeling, and it took so long for letters to get there, if they got there at all, because this is all by mail, nothing by air, no. So but the family was very well remembered by her. She was so concerned about them, naturally.
And so the Nazis are occupying Europe, but at the same time, the Japanese are still advancing into China and are starting to move into Southeast Asia. Can you recall if Japan was just as prominent of a topic as Nazi Germany as at that time?
I would say not at that time, because Japan we knew what they were doing over there because they had been in China such a long time. And so we knew they were rattling the sabers over there and wondering what they were going to do next. But it was very active over in Europe. And of course, that's the way our whole industrial machine was pointed at Europe, because they needed so much right now. And that's what Roosevelt's job was, made his job so hard, because the nation as such looked at World War II as their war. When we were in the World War I, they said no more wars, that's their wars, but we will gladly help you produce airplanes and things like that. And of course, that kept the Nazis also from seeing us as enemies, and so they didn't turn their whole machine on us as far as sinking our ships until we got into the war. And that's when we got into the war. At that time, they turned all they had on us, and we found we had a big gap there as far as anti-submarine warfare was concerned. We had ships that we used for that, the destroyers and so forth, but it took 2 years to make a destroyer. The ship that I was on, it took 90 days to fix a ship like that. So they had to put this thing together in just such rapid shape. And so...
Before we get to that part,
yeah,
because I believe the patrol craft you were on was a PC-461 class, if I recall?
Excuse me.
A 461 class patrol craft, I believe you were on? Does that ring a bell, PC-461 type class? Smaller than a destroyer escort, but just a little bit larger. Like a sub chaser.
Yeah, there were about 3 or 4 different
versions.
Types. Yeah, well, there were.
But before we get into that, I did have one question I really wanted to ask you. Is if you can recall the day that you found out about Pearl Harbor being attacked, and how did that make you feel or react?
I got a call at noon on December 7th. And my close buddy in high school, he called up, he said, "Hey, did you hear the news?" I said, "What?" And he said, "The Japs just attacked Pearl Harbor." And I said, "Where's Pearl Harbor?" I had no idea where it was. I'm not sure I knew where Hawaii was, really. And I said, gee, that's amazing. Well, okay, what are we going to do today, guys? And, I mean, it had no big effect at all. It was just kind of, I'll be darned, that's interesting. And, but it wasn't until a little bit later that I finally got through that, hey, this is a big deal. And so it had a big deal to do with us.
Do you recall the mood of the town shifting by chance after the attack?
Oh, totally.
How did it shift?
Before it was let's hold back. Yeah, we're not going to send them all. We won't send them our boys and all this sort of thing. Hold back on all that, and because we don't want to we don't want to be fighting a war and so forth. So that was. But the minute the Japs attacked Pearl Harbor, it was like he used the word "stabbed in the back." That was very adequate knowledge or description of how we, the nation, had looked at it, and it immediately overnight turned just like that. That we were going to get these guys, we're going to kill them, man, we're going to squash them, we're going to whatever. Amazing, just amazing.
It invoked a fire. It sounds like.
Oh yeah.
Within the national spirit of the American people.
Totally. totally. And,
Me growing up, the only way I have ever felt that was after 9/11. After September 11th,
yes,
the terrorist attacks.
yes.
Would you describe September 11th and how the nation came together kind of similar to Pearl Harbor? Or was Pearl Harbor just much bigger of a deal?
Oh, no questions to size. The adequate, but September 11th was a small compare. But the nation, when it got open, that hit everybody in every home, everywhere. And so they could not have turned the key on the ignition better than by doing what they did. And so it's, I really believe, well, Rommel, who was the general of Germans in Africa, he said, this is why when he heard that Hitler had declared war on us because they were an ally of Japan, he said he should not go after the United States because their productive capacity was so huge they could take Africa. And so he was aware of that, but I don't think Hitler quite understood that. He he was blinded by something. And so it was a tremendous thing. And of course then it hit everybody equally, all of us, everybody in school, it just changed.
So after hearing about Pearl Harbor, you're about 16 at that time?
I was a sophomore, and so I graduated in '43.
And service was pretty much on the horizon for you at that time.
Oh yes, very much so.
After Pearl Harbor, was your thinking up to that point when you're going to join the military? Or?
Well, yeah, pretty much so, because the draft had been started prior to our being in the war, but on a limited basis. But Pearl Harbor, the draft came in, and so you knew you were going to graduate in '43, and you were eligible, you had the number, and so forth, and so you knew you were in. So it was just a matter of, are you going to enlist or are you going to wait till your number is called?
And what were you?
I enlisted.
You volunteered?
Because I wanted to. I don't really know why, except I wanted to be in the Navy, and for some unknown reason. But
Can you recall going down to the Naval Recruiter's office and what happened after you?
No, what happened was in school I was taking a lot of engineering classes for college. Nobody in my family had ever been to college, and I was taking those classes, and the two guys I was running with were very sharp in that thing. So I knew that I was going to be an engineer someday, and so I got the word from somebody. They said the Army, Navy, and Marines are here, and they have some special programs, and so why don't you go and listen to it? So I did, and they told about some programs they had that I could get into to become in the engineering part of the Navy, which of course is strong in engineering. And so that was the route I took. And so I was that was the one I was going to go to. It was Army, Navy, or Marines, yeah.
Now, can you recall leaving Fort Boot Camp, basic training, and how did you get there? Did you go by train, bus?
It was no. I would have. Oh, you mean to go to basic into the Navy? Oh yeah. No, that was just taken down by my folks to the local whatever it was to where I was enlisted. In other words,
The physicals and all that.
yeah. So it was not a hard thing whatsoever, but it was a shame. But it was a good program and the idea was pointing us toward that, and that's what specifically the Navy wanted. My two buddies went into the Army program, and so they were sent right to the Army base. The Navy, of course, that's a long ways away. They had people in the local colleges to where they would put us into courses that pertain more to the Navy and to the electronics, not electronics, but that sort of work on a ship. So it was a little different pointing. All they got out of it was a rifle. I got a ship eventually, but I was not that forward looking. I mean, we looked about this far, and I had was about it, you know.
Especially as a teenager.
Pardon me?
Especially as a teenager, I don't think.
Oh yeah, that teenager. You know, what time is it? You know, hey, when do we eat? You know.
So, but you did basic training. It sounded like in Florida.
That was part of it. That was actually for the small ship. Once I was in the Navy, they had various courses that we had to have, and I had to be on the way to getting to be a lieutenant JG, because that was what this particular program was pointed for, was for an officer corps. And so I enlisted in that, so I had the necessary educational requirements to do so. So I graduated from Notre Dame, you might say. The program was at Notre Dame. I was not really a Notre Dame, but
You can still claim it.
yeah, I say, yeah, I've graduated Notre Dame.
So when you volunteered for the Navy, you actually went through the OCS program.
Yes.
So you didn't start off as a basic enlistee,
Yes.
E1 or anything like that?
Yes, you do. Yeah, we went through the basic enlistment. I was just the lowest rank of.
Like a seaman.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, where did you conduct that training? Was it up in Illinois, San Diego?
Actually, the first one was at the University of Minnesota. Then the next one was at St. Thomas College in St. Paul. And then the graduation was Notre Dame. This is programs, these are all nationwide programs for this particular part of the Navy.
Now, your graduation from Notre Dame, what was your graduating rating?
I had forget the lowest thing.
Oh, so you still graduated from Notre Dame as like a seaman first class or something to that?
Well, I was a seaman first. I was a seaman first, but I was an ensign, which is the lowest ranked officer. And so that's what I was when I graduated from that. And then they sent me to the various parts I needed to be trained in that, and they sent me to Florida where I was educated in that ship. And then they sent me to a port to where I was put on a ship, and then shipped out to where my ship was.
How did they educate you in Florida about the operations of a patrol craft?
Just how do you make this thing go? You know, how do you point it? How do you shoot it? How do you do whatever? So we cruised around there in various types of weather and so forth. So it was very practical.
And this is during 1943.
This was
Were there any concerns about German U-boats off the
Oh
coast?
yes, yeah. But they weren't. That didn't worry. But there were a lot of U-boats down in the Caribbean. You know, that was very, very productive for the Germans. And in fact, there was no lighting problem in the United States, and the Germans would wait off the coast of New York, and they could see the silhouettes of the ships, even though the ships weren't lit. They could see the silhouette. They shoot the silhouette to catch the ships. So they were shooting they were just shooting all the ships that they wanted to, so very productive right there. Here, once you get this big U.S. Production going, they could then catch it on its way. So they were vital. It was vital.
So blackout conditions were in effect pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. Once they came around to that thought of let's have a blackout, well, it became blackout all the way through. Of course, on California, they blacked out totally on December 7th after that,
So now being in Florida, being trained on patrol craft operations, you mentioned then you were transferred to another vessel that then would take you to PC 597?
Yeah, what I did then, I was sent up to San Francisco, put on a troop ship. It took me to the South Pacific, down by Australia, and I'll think of the name of this, down by New Zealand, where the ship was.
New Caledonia?
This is in the Pacific. Yeah.
But just north of New Zealand, so it sounds like you were southeast of the Solomons, kind of east of Australia, and that
kind of
area?
Right in that spot right there. Yeah,
New Caledonia? Does that ring a bell?
New Caledonia, that's it. New Caledonia, yeah. And then up to, we did a lot in the Solomons. We were doing a lot around there. And because there's just a lot of action.
So when you came into New Caledonia, you were on a troop ship. So PC 597 was already in that area of operation.
They were anchored right in there. Yeah, they were there. Now, when they got there, I'm not real sure.
And when you came on board, were you replacing somebody, or?
Yes, I'm sure I was, but I don't know who that was. But I'm sure I was.
And when you were coming on board, what were you assigned as?
I think I was assigned as, I believe it was gunnery officer. I think that was what it was. But as a junior officer, you're put wherever the captain needs you, And so there were just, as you can see, 5 or 6 of us there, and so that's the start.
So if I can recall, a PC craft had about a crew of about 65 to 70?
About 65, yeah.
And then so once you arrived on PC 597, did you have time to get familiar with the vessel, or did you guys immediately go out and patrol?
No, you just get in, grab holes, and we'll point out what you need to do, yeah.
And can you describe what some of the first patrols of that vessel are? Can you describe some of your first patrols with PC 597?
Well, we were kind of a catch-all ship to do lots of different things. We weren't always after submarines. Tomorrow, practically all of our orders came from Pearl. And we're sending out a flotilla, a bunch of 10 cargo ships going from here to there. I want you to catch them and join these other PCs to take them in, And so that's the way it actually was done. But on the other hand, it might be the next day. It might be that we're going to go to these other islands out there uninhabited and look and see if we can find any downed pilots there. And so there was a lot of catch-up stuff to do. It was not day by day, fighting and stuff like that. So.
But operating in the Solomons, can you recall what month you arrived in the Solomons, and was it during 43?
I did that. I'm not sure that it was. I'm not sure that it was 43. I think I might have been early 44, because yeah, I think it was 40, right around there.
Because that's right, maybe 5 months, 6 months after the Japanese left Guadalcanal.
Yeah.
You still had the Japanese in Rabaul.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
It sounds like you were patrolling around an area called Iron Bottom Sound. Does that sound
excuse
familiar?
me.
Iron Bottom Sound?
Oh yes, that was the nickname of the sound right there, very much so. And there was so much action there with the big Japanese fleet and ours, and so it's everything it's cracked up to be. And then the Japanese were so strong with their big fleet, and. So it was a tag and tag sort of a thing around that part.
So pretty much going from island to island, either conducting patrols for anti-submarine warfare, escorting convoys, troop ships, back and forth, logistics. Was that kind of more or less what you guys did on the daily?
Basically, yeah, just whatever they wanted, and our little ship, you pick up whatever you can, or whatever they think you can do,
Now, being on a vessel that small, what were the living quarters like, and how many heads did you even have on board?
Well, you probably on a chair like this, you could probably have six guys. But it was, we were stacked in there like
Sardines.
Like sardines. And you think, well, what do you need 65 guys? Well, you need it because of the various types. You have various types of equipment that needs to be operated, and you need it for your peak times. So it isn't necessarily that all those guys are doing something, but somebody is doing something that has got to be done when it needs to be done, not tomorrow,
And as an officer, did you hot rack or did you have your own rack?
I had my own, but I was in a closet with another guy. so my bed was right here and his was right here. The captain had a big cabin about as big as this of his own. He was the only one that had a cabin of his own. And in fact, when I first came on board there, they had the other guy, whoever he was, hadn't left yet, so they didn't have a rack for me to be in. So I was up in the wardroom, which is the room where they assembled to feed the officers and plan stuff and like that.
Like the officer's galley.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they as far as waking you up in the morning, they put on Lionel Hampton's music, and so it was a great ship to be on from the standpoint. There were no uniforms. I mean, maybe we'd wear a hat and so forth, but you wore shorts, and it was a work sort of a thing. The only time we put a uniform as such on was if we were going into a city or going on to the admiral's. The ship is coming in, and but otherwise it was built for comfort because the sun is out all the time. This is equator. And a little boy from Norway, my skin is about as, and I'm still suffering from it literally, and my skin is a mess, but I've got what I've got. But
now you mentioned going into port, and from my understanding, it sounds like your vessel is a very